You act one way around people, and completely different when you're alone. In public, you seem calm, polite, functional, but privately, your thoughts feel heavier, sharper, more real. And sometimes you wonder, which version is actually me? Because the strange part isn't that you change, it's that both versions feel real and fake at the same time. It usually starts quietly. You learn how to read rooms, how to adjust your tone, how to become easier to accept. So around some people, you become quieter. Around others, more confident, more agreeable, more careful. And at first, it feels normal. Social psychology says humans naturally adapt to their environment. Your brain constantly scans for social safety. This is called self-monitoring. High self-monitors unconsciously shape their behavior depending on who they're with. Not because they're manipulative, but because their nervous system prioritizes belonging. The problem is, what happens over time? When adaptation becomes constant, you stop noticing the difference between connection and performance. So eventually, you leave conversations feeling strangely disconnected, not because something bad happened, but because you don't know which parts were genuine. And this confusion spreads into everything else. Your decisions feel unstable. Your goals keep changing. Your personality feels inconsistent. One day, you want attention. The next day, you want to disappear. You tell yourself, I don't even know who I am anymore. And slowly, a painful belief forms underneath all of it. Maybe there's no real self at all. But that belief is incomplete, because your brain is not splitting you randomly. It's responding to something deeper. And once you see that mechanism clearly, your behavior starts making sense in a completely different way. You are not two different people. You are one person, running two survival strategies. One version protects connection. The other protects truth. The social version asks, how do I stay accepted? The private version asks, what do I actually feel? And when those two systems stop communicating with each other, you begin feeling divided. But this isn't dysfunction. It's adaptation. Your brain learned that some parts of you were safer to show than others. Maybe confidence got rewarded. Maybe sensitivity got ignored. Maybe honesty created tension. So your nervous system became selective. Not fake. Selective. Behavioral psychology calls this reinforcement learning. The brain repeats behaviors that reduce discomfort or increase social reward. So over time, your social self became stronger, while your quieter, unfiltered self stayed hidden in private spaces. And eventually, the gap between them became so wide, it started feeling like two separate identities. But the gap itself is the clue, because what feels divided can also be reconnected. Think of your mind like a theater stage. Different environments activate different roles, not because you're pretending, but because the brain is context-dependent. Neuroscience shows that your behavior changes based on social cues, memory associations, and emotional prediction. Your brain is constantly asking, what version of me works best here? And most of this happens automatically. The prefrontal cortex helps regulate behavior based on social expectations. Meanwhile, the limbic system tracks emotional safety. So when you walk into a room full of judgment, your brain adjusts before you consciously realize it. Tone changes, posture changes. Even opinions can shift slightly. This is why you sometimes say things you don't fully believe, then regret them later in silence. Here's the mental model. Imagine your identity as water, poured into different containers. The water is still you, but the shape changes depending on the environment. Healthy adaptation means the water bends slightly. Identity confusion happens when the container controls the entire shape. After years of adapting too much, you stop recognizing your original form. And this creates cognitive dissonance, a psychological tension between how you act and how you inwardly feel. That tension is exhausting, because your brain has to constantly manage two realities at once, one for social survival, one for emotional truth. And eventually, the nervous system gets tired of switching. That's why some people feel emotionally numb after social interaction, or suddenly isolated after being around others all day. Not because they hate people, but because performing identity consumes mental energy. So the real question isn't, which version is the real me? The real question is, which version appears when you stop managing perception? Reconnecting these two selves does not happen through dramatic change. It happens through small moments of psychological honesty. What to do? Pay attention to environments where your behavior shifts intensely. Why it works in the brain. Your nervous system adapts strongest in places associated with social threat or reward. Awareness reduces automatic behavioral switching. Real-life example. You speak confidently with friends, but become unusually quiet around authority figures. That difference contains information. What to do? Practice expressing harmless preferences without adjusting them immediately. Why it works in the brain. This strengthens internal validation pathways instead of relying entirely on external approval. Real-life example. Choosing the movie you actually want to watch instead of automatically saying, "I'm fine with anything." Small honesty builds identity stability. What to do? Create moments where nobody is watching, rating, or responding to you. Why it works in the brain. Constant social feedback keeps the brain externally focused. Solitude helps reactivate self-referential processing. Real-life example. Walking alone without music. Journaling without posting. Doing something enjoyable without documenting it. At first, this feels uncomfortable, because silence removes distraction, and distraction often hides identity confusion. What to do? Notice which environments leave you feeling expanded, and which leave you mentally drained. Why it works in the brain. Your nervous system signals authenticity through energy regulation. Sustained masking increases cognitive load and emotional fatigue. Real-life example. After some conversations, you feel calm. After others, you replay every word for hours. Your body notices misalignment before your mind explains it. What to do? Choose one small behavior that stays consistent across environments. Why it works in the brain. Consistency creates neural coherence. Repeated stable behaviors strengthen identity continuity over time. Real-life example. Always speaking slowly when nervous. Always writing honestly in your notes app. Always taking 10 seconds before agreeing with something. These tiny acts become anchors. Not performances. Not reinventions. Anchors. So maybe you were never two different people. Maybe you were one person, fragmented by adaptation. One part learned how to survive socially. Another part quietly protected what felt real. And now, your task is not choosing between them. It's helping them meet each other again. Because identity is not something you invent overnight. It's something your brain builds through repeated honesty. Small moments, tiny preferences, quiet decisions nobody applauds. That's how the nervous system slowly learns. I don't have to split myself to belong. And over time, the distance between your public self and private self begins to shrink. Not perfectly, but enough to finally feel solid inside your own life. You don't need to become more impressive. You don't need to force a new personality. You just need fewer moments where you abandon yourself automatically. Because the real exhaustion was never being around people. It was constantly translating yourself into someone easier to accept. And maybe healing starts here. Not by asking, which version of me is real, but by quietly noticing, which version feels most at peace when nobody is watching.